It is nearly August. If I asked what you did with this year, you could not tell me. You could tell me you were busy, a calendar packed like a brick wall, an inbox emptied 1,000 times, 7 months gone somewhere. Seneca wrote a short, furious essay about exactly that feeling, and his verdict is not the comforting one. The problem is not that life is short, life is long. Long enough for the greatest things a person could attempt, and you are spending it the way a fool spends an inheritance. That is the claim of On the Shortness of Life, written in Rome in the early 50s of the 1st century, in the first years of the arrangement that would swallow the rest of his life. And notice what it does to you. If life is short, you are a victim, and there is nothing to be done but sigh about it. If life is long and you are leaking it, then the year did not get stolen from you. You handed it out, in pieces, to people and errands you would never in 1,000 years have let touch your money. Seneca is the writer who refuses to let the metaphor stay a metaphor. He treats time the way an accountant treats capital, as a finite, non-renewable holding that you are silently spending every second, whether or not you keep the books. Nobody gives away cash to strangers, everybody gives away days. So for the next 20 minutes, I want to run his audit on you, where the hours actually go. Why being busy is the most convincing disguise a wasted life can wear. Why the man making this argument was the richest, most compromised, most over-scheduled man in the Roman Empire and knew it. And what he says to do about it today, before another year quietly disappears. The man who wrote that was, at the time, one of the wealthiest human beings alive. Lucius Annaeus Seneca was born in Spain around 4 years before the Common Era into a rich provincial family that shipped him to Rome to make something of himself. And he did. He became the most celebrated prose writer of his generation, a senator, a tragedian, a name people dropped. Then he was exiled to Corsica for 8 years on a charge of adultery with an emperor's sister, and then recalled by the Empress Agrippina to tutor her 11-year-old son. The boy's name was Nero. For roughly a decade, Seneca was the most powerful advisor in Rome, effectively steering the empire while his pupil matured into a murderer, and he grew colossally rich doing it, lending money across the provinces on a scale his enemies never let him forget. In the year 65, accused of conspiracy, he was ordered by that same pupil to open his veins, and obeyed. Hold both halves of that in your head, because this essay does not work without them. On the Shortness of Life is addressed to a Roman official named Paulinus, who ran the grain supply of the city, and it argues that a life spent absorbing other people's urgencies is a life not lived. The man making the argument was doing exactly that, at maximum altitude, for one of the worst employers in recorded history. He knew. He says so in 100 small ways. And that is precisely why the essay burns rather than soothes. This is not a serene sage on a mountaintop explaining time management to lesser mortals. It is a spectacularly busy man auditing himself and not liking the total, writing from inside the trap, which is the only place any of us ever read it from. Here is the whole essay in one sentence. Time is the only thing you own that you can never earn back, and the reason your life feels short is not that it is short, but that you keep spending it on people and errands you would never let near your bank account. That is the spine, and everything else hangs off it. Seneca's move is to take the one resource we treat as infinite and shove it into the same mental drawer where we keep money, property and inheritance, where we are already ruthless, already careful, already suspicious of anyone with their hand out. He is not asking you to work less or meditate more. He is asking you to notice that you have been running an enormous account without a ledger. We will walk it in 5 beats. First, the accusation. Life is not short, you are wasteful. And that reframing is the whole medicine. Second, the asset. Time is the only non-renewable thing you hold, and the only one you hand out for free. Third, the disguise. Busy is not the same as alive, and a long career is not a long life. Fourth, the postponement, the retirement fantasy, the someday plan, and the fact that Seneca was living inside the biggest version of it anyone had ever built. And fifth, the cure, which is smaller and stranger than you expect, and can begin before this video ends. 5 beats, 1 non-renewable asset, and the most uncomfortable financial statement ever written about you. First beat, the accusation. Seneca opens by refusing the complaint that everybody starts with. People grumble at nature, he says, for handing us such a mean allowance of years, and even great men have joined the chorus, and even the doctors have their proverb about art being long and life short. Then he takes the whole complaint and turns it around. We do not have a very short time assigned to us, but we lose a great deal of it. And a few lines later, he closes the trap. Thus it is, we do not receive a short life, but we make it a short one, and we are not poor in days, but wasteful of them. He puts it in money terms immediately, because that is how he thinks. Enormous, kingly wealth in the hands of a bad owner evaporates in a season. A moderate fortune in the hands of a careful one grows by use. Life works the same way. You do not have a small allocation. You have a normal one, spent badly. Feel how that lands, because the sting is the point. The complaint we prefer, that there is not enough time, is comfortable, because it makes you the victim of a cosmic shortage. Seneca replaces it with something worse and far more useful. There is enough. You are the leak. And the moment you accept the swap, you have gained the only thing that ever helps, which is that a spending problem, unlike a supply problem, is something you can actually do something about tomorrow morning. The line to carry, you are not short of time, you are wasteful of it. Second beat, the asset. Try this. A stranger stops you in the street and asks for $200. You refuse without thinking. Now a colleague asks for 2 hours of your Saturday, and you say yes before you have finished hearing the question. Seneca watched Romans do exactly this and could not get over it. You cannot find anyone who wants to distribute his money, yet among how many people does everyone distribute his life? Men will fight with stones and cudgels, he says, over a few inches of disputed boundary, and then let anyone at all walk into their days and take up residence. Why the difference? Because time is invisible. It does not clink. Nobody hands it over in a bag. And in his first letter to his friend Lucilius, he names what that invisibility hides. Nothing, Lucilius, is ours except time. Read that as a balance sheet. Your house can be rebuilt. Your money can be re-earned. Your reputation can, painfully, be repaired. An hour cannot. There is no market anywhere on earth that sells hours at any price to anyone. It is the only holding you have that is strictly non-renewable, and it is the only one you give away without a receipt, to committees, to arguments in comment sections, to the meeting that should have been a message. Seneca even audits himself in that letter and admits he wastes plenty. His claim is only that he knows exactly what he is wasting and why, which is more than most people can say about a single week. The line to carry: guard your hours the way you already guard your money. Third beat: the disguise. Here is Seneca's sharpest observation, and the one that hurts educated, hard-working, high-achieving people most. Busyness looks exactly like a life. It has motion, it has status, it produces exhaustion, which we have learned to read as proof of significance. Look through Rome, he says, top to bottom, and you find the same picture at every level. This man calls in his friends, that one appears in court, that one is on trial, that one is defending him, that one is on the jury, and no one lays claim to his own self. Everyone wastes his time over someone else. Nobody belongs to himself. Then he turns to the grey hair we treat as evidence of a long life and refuses to count it. You have no grounds, therefore, for supposing that anyone has lived long because he has wrinkles or grey hairs. Such a man has not lived long, but has only been long alive. Long alive. Sit with that phrase, because it is the whole diagnosis in 3 words. And he gives it a picture too. Would you say a man had voyaged widely if a gale caught him as he left the harbour and blew him round and round the same stretch of water for years? He has not travelled, he has been tossed about. Now think about your own last 5 years. Motion certainly, notifications certainly, but travel, or the same harbour in heavy weather at speed. The line to carry: being long alive is not the same as having lived. Fourth beat: the postponement. Everyone has a plan that starts later. After the 50th year, the Romans told each other, "I will hand myself over to leisure. My 60th will be my last year of office." Seneca hears it and asks the only sane question: and what exactly guarantees that your life runs that long? And who agreed to let it go the way you arranged it? Then he names the delusion underneath. It is that people live as though they would live forever. And its exact shape: you fear everything, like mortals as you are, and yet you desire everything as if you were immortals. We flinch at every risk and plan as if the calendar were bottomless. He is savage about the arithmetic of it. Are you not ashamed, he asks, to keep only the leftovers of your life for yourself, to reserve for your own mind only the hours no business wanted? How late it is to begin life just when we have to be leaving it. And in the 49th letter, he shrinks the whole span down until you can hold it. The time which we spend in living is but a point, nay, even less than a point. Now put Seneca himself in the frame, because he does. This is a man who postponed his life at imperial scale, who wrote about leisure while running an empire for a monster, who twice asked his own pupil for permission to retire and was refused, and who finally got his freedom only in the form of an execution order. He is not preaching down at you. He is describing the trap from the deepest part of it. The line to carry. The life you are saving for later is the one being spent right now. Fifth beat: the cure. After all that, you expect a grand program. What Seneca offers instead is almost embarrassingly small. In the 101st letter he writes, "Therefore, my dear Lucilius, begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." That is it. Not a decade plan. A day treated as a complete unit, with a beginning and an end and a verdict, rather than as a coupon you spend on some larger day that never arrives. The person who lives this way, he says, has already rounded off his life, so tomorrow can only be a bonus. The person who lives on hope alone finds that the immediate future keeps slipping out of his grasp, and greed slides into the space it leaves, and behind the greed, the fear of death. The dialogue makes the same case from the other side. Everything else has teachers, Seneca notes, and can be picked up quickly, but one's whole life must be spent in learning how to live, and which may perhaps surprise you more, one's whole life must be spent in learning how to die. He is not being morbid. He is saying that living well is a skill, not a phase, and that the person who is genuinely master of his own hours has a long life almost by definition, because he keeps every part of it and lets no piece lie idle or in someone else's hands. That, and not longevity, is what Seneca means by a long life. The line to carry: stop rehearsing your life and start counting it, one whole day at a time. So what does all of it add up to? One idea hammered from 5 directions. Time is the only asset you can never earn back, and you have been the only person in your life not treating it that way. Seneca begins by taking away your favorite excuse. Life is not short, you are wasteful, and that swap moves the problem from the universe, where you are powerless, to your calendar, where you are not. He shows you the asset itself, invisible because it does not clink, given away hourly to people who would be thrown out of the house if they asked for your savings instead. He strips the disguise off busyness and separates being long alive from having lived, because grey hair proves nothing and motion is not travel. He exposes the postponement, the after my 50th year fantasy, the leftovers we reserve for ourselves, the fear of everything paired with the appetite of an immortal. And he ends with something small enough to actually do. Begin now and count today as a whole life rather than a down payment on one. Put it together and the essay stops being an ancient scolding and becomes what it always was, a financial statement with your name on it. Not a demand that you achieve more, almost the opposite. It is a demand that you notice you are already spending, at a constant rate, the one thing you cannot replace, and that you decide, deliberately, who gets to spend it. The uncomfortable part is that the ledger has always been open. Seneca just turns it around so it faces you. Here is the one thing to carry out of this essay and into your week, and it takes about 10 minutes. Do Seneca's audit. He runs it on an old man in the dialogue. Tell me how much of your time went to creditors, to quarrels, to clients, to running up and down the city on business, and you will find you have not lived as many years as you have counted. So run it on yourself, for the last 7 days only. Write down where the hours went, not what you intended, what actually happened. Meetings you did not need to be in. The 40 minutes of scrolling that felt like 4. The favor you said yes to before hearing the question. Then find one recurring item on that list, exactly one, and cancel it this week. Not reorganize it, cancel it. Say the awkward sentence, I am not going to be able to do that anymore. Because here is the mechanism Seneca understood and most productivity advice hides from you. You cannot fix a spending problem by earning more. There is no earning more. There is only refusing. And the striking thing about doing it once is how disproportionately it changes the feel of a week. One deleted obligation returns hours that no amount of optimizing was ever going to find. Then tonight, do the second half, which costs nothing. Count today as its own complete life and ask the only question that matters. If this day were the whole of it, was it spent or was it given away? The line to carry: cancel one thing and count today. Seneca wrote on the shortness of life in the middle of the most overscheduled existence in the Roman Empire, and he never claimed to have solved it. He claimed only to see it clearly, that we are not poor in days, but wasteful of them, that time is the one holding we cannot buy back, that the busiest life on earth can be the least lived, and that the cure begins with one honest look at where the hours actually go. 2,000 years later, with the fastest, most beautifully engineered, time-consuming devices ever built sitting in our pockets, his audit has not aged a day. If this walk through the essay gave you something worth keeping, subscribe, because there is a new classic every week, faithfully, in about 20 minutes. Next time we go from a Roman aristocrat who could not stop working to a man who cannot stop thinking, and Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, the strangest and most modern book of the 19th century, in which a bitter clerk in a Petersburg basement demolishes the idea that human beings ever act in their own interest. And before you go, tell me in the comments, name the one recurring thing you are going to cancel this week, and who has been quietly spending your hours without asking. Write it down where you can see it. I read every reply.